Hey folks, Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week our first question comes from Bruce Bartup, who says, "Love as if every day were your last, farm as though you'll live forever. If, say tomorrow, were your last day on YouTube before going alive elsewhere to do other stuff, what would you like to do on YouTube, and what, if anything, would you want to leave as a kind of bequest?" My farewell video would be a Steve and Stuffy video. I think I've made it clear over the years many times that the Steve and Stuffy series is my favorite thing that I do, and that's the series of mine that I feel the closest to. So that's the note that I would want to go out on. And what would I want to leave behind for YouTube after I was gone? I guess I would just leave my videos, and hopefully when people would watch them, they would see that when I was at my best, I was someone who tried to be funny, tried to be honest, tried to offer some hopefully intelligent commentary on important issues, or at least issues that I thought were important, and that I tried not to be a dick about it most of the time. And I hope that when they watch me trying to not be a dick about it when I do those various other things, I hope that I make it look easy, because it is. It's so easy to not be a dick. It's amazing how easy it is to not be a dick. So there is no excuse for anybody who is a complete fucking dick on YouTube, because it's so easy not to be. Next question is from Ahoyerno, who says, question: many debates about feminism devolve into semantics. For example, the wage gap, as I define it, is the gendered wage differential as reported by the income tax department on a national level. That way, it's an easily verifiable fact for any country of choice. The discussion then becomes about how my definition is wrong. I see definitions as a form of honesty. When a term is not clear, I define it to make it clear what I'm saying when I use that term. If you refuse to accept me using a term in that way, you're literally disagreeing to speak the same language. I'm not saying you have to use wage gap in the same way, but at least accept that I use it in this way. If you define it too, then we both know what the other person means. Of course, an anti-egalitarian will never define his terms. So by disagreeing on my definition without offering one himself, an anti-egalitarian will make it impossible to even talk about the subject, yet continue to pollute the debate until #blocked by Ahoyerno. You're the only English major I know, so what's your view on definitions? I feel the same way about definitions as you do, substantially. I think that's why it's so important and considered good form to define your terms at the beginning of a discussion or a debate, so that people will know what you mean when you use a particular term. And people who refuse to do that are simply dishonest and are not adhering to fair and proper rules of debate, or just civil discourse in general, never mind like formal debate. It's a way of being honest and being clear about what you're talking about. And I have noticed in my experience, not only the arguing about definitions, I've also experienced people who sort of accuse me of being absolutist or of claiming some sort of transcendent authority over language by saying that a word means a particular thing. Like, for instance, I've experienced many times when I talk about atheism and I talk collectively about the atheist movement, or just the atheist community, the group of people defined as atheists. And even if I make it clear in a video that that's what I'm talking about when I say atheism, when I say atheism in this context, I'm not talking about the simple state of the state of mind of not believing that gods exist. I'm talking about atheism as in the group of atheists. When I say atheism, that's what I mean. People will still come back at me in comments and say, that's not what atheism means. Atheism just means not believing in gods. Okay, but I told you that I was using it in that other way. And if you're going to say I'm the only person who's ever used it that way, I'm sorry, but reality begs to differ. Many people use atheism to refer collectively to atheists as a group. You can look it up. If you're a dictionary absolutist, you can find examples of the word being defined in that way, and yet still people will say, that's not what it means, and then they'll go on further and say, who are you to change the definition? You can't just change the definition of words. Atheism means this, and it's always meant this. Or racism means this, and it's always meant this. And who are you to change the definition? Okay. I'm not changing the definition. I'm using it in a sense where it is commonly used, and I have told you very clearly that that's how I'm using it in this context, and all you have to say to me is, that's not what it means, or you have no right to redefine it. I mean, at that point, what is being accomplished? by continuing that conversation other than entertaining a troll by wasting your own time? Luckily, there's a perfect solution to this problem, and it's called the block button. Captain Andy, hi Steve, I've recently read in the media that we have passed the tipping point regarding climate change and that it is now irreversible. This is something I've been dreading for a while now, and I don't think people fully understand the reality of this situation, i.e. that we are going to see over the coming decades the rise of climate refugees, i.e. people from flooded areas of the world seeking refuge in countries that are still mostly above sea level. Given how negatively people react to the comparatively small number of refugees we see seeking asylum in the West now, and how bad people are at sharing resources, I fear greatly the resource riots and even wars that are almost certainly inevitable. Do you have any thoughts on this situation? I don't mind admitting I'm very scared, if not for myself, then for future generations, including the children in my own family. I feel like I say this whenever I answer your questions, Andy, but I'm right there with you. I mean, I feel a great deal of anxiety for how the world is going to be for the generation of our children and our grandchildren. And also I feel a lot of shame. I feel embarrassed. I feel shameful at the stubbornness and the short-sightedness of our species, because climate change is something that we have known is a serious problem for a long time. Like, a lot of people who are sort of anti-climate change or deny that climate change is real or is a problem, they say they try to make it sound like this is something that scientists just made up a few years ago. Like, you never used to hear about any of this climate change stuff, and now all of a sudden it's all anybody can talk about. When they say those things, they reveal either their own ignorance or that they are depending on the ignorance of their audience. Because I remember people talking about climate change and global warming specifically when I was a child, and I'm 36 years old. This goes back to the 80s and the 90s that I remember people, both like scientists on TV and just sort of popular culture, just general talk about climate change, about global warming. It's not a new problem, and we didn't just find out about it. And we have done very little about it, even though we knew that it was real, and we knew that its consequences could be catastrophic if we didn't act to slow it or to stop it. And the shitty part is, yeah, eventually we're going to be in a situation where there are thousands, millions of people fleeing parts of the world that are no longer habitable by humans because they're underwater. And they're going to be coming to the other parts of the world where things are relatively okay, and we're going to be inundated with refugees, and we're going to be blaming the refugees, just like we always do. We never blame the problem that causes the refugee crisis. We always blame the refugees, and we say, why do these people have to come here? Why do we have to take care of them? Well, I mean, in the case of the United States and the future climate change refugees that we're going to have to take, the reason we have to take care of them is because it's kind of our fault that they had to flee from their homes, because we knew for decades that climate change was a real problem and a serious problem and could have catastrophic effects on this planet. And we did nothing. We chose to do nothing. And now, unfortunately, probably in a way that we can now no longer really prevent, future generations will suffer for our ignorance and our stubbornness and our short-sightedness. And that is a fucking shame. Timothy Mastic. Hi, Steve. I've been getting into disability studies, and even as a bleeding heart liberal, I still find myself pushing back against some of the ideas. For example, there are 3 primary models for disability throughout history. The religious model, disability as either a marker of sin or transcendence. The medical model, disabilities are a problem that need fixed. And the socio-cultural model, disability as an affirmative political identity. I find it really easy for my thinking to slip into the medical model despite my best efforts to inhabit the socio-cultural model, i.e., why wouldn't you fix some impairment if the treatment were available and affordable? What are your thoughts on disability? Are there some disabilities you think should be fixed, or others you think shouldn't be? Well, first of all, just in case anybody isn't sure about this, I just want to make it clear that I am not disabled myself. So when I am about to speak on this issue of disability, I need to put that out there and make that unambiguous, that I am speaking about something that I myself have not experienced and do not experience on a daily basis. So I am not a disabled person. But I think from my own experience and from just knowing disabled people and reading the writing of people who are able to speak eloquently and powerfully about their disability and about their experiences in the world as a disabled person, I think the best way to look at it is sort of a combination of what you describe as the medical view and the socio-cultural view. I think it's extremely important, vitally important, to stand up and stand alongside disabled people politically, to fight for that as a positive identity, to fight for the rights and the equal and fair and just treatment of disabled people. I think that's very important because they live in a world where they are disadvantaged, not just because of any physical limitations they may have or mental limitations they may have, but because they are perceived as being less than, as being less important, or as being, making other people uncomfortable. There's all sorts of negative things and stigma that disabled folks have to handle, and for that reason, they deserve and require the ability to assert themselves politically as a positive identity. But I also think it's important to have treatments and operations and procedures available that can alter disabilities for people who want that. I don't think that there's any disability that a person who has it should be forced to quote unquote fix if that's not what they want. If there is a procedure available that is safe and affordable to change some disability so that that person will no longer have that disability, I think it's important that that be available. I think that kind of work should be done and is vital, but I also think that it should be up to the disabled person to decide whether or not they want to undergo that procedure and change their disability. I don't think it's my place as an abled person to make such a blanket statement and to say, well, if there's a surgery that can correct deafness, why doesn't everybody just get it? I feel like that's a little judgmental because I don't know what it's like to be deaf. I don't know what it's like to be part of a deaf culture. I don't know what it's like to commune and have fellowship with fellow deaf people. I don't know about that community. I don't know about the history of that. I know nothing about it. So for me to just blithely say, oh no, there's a surgery now, you should get it fixed, there won't be any more deaf people, that feels awfully judgmental to me. And the same thing with any other kind of disability. I think that if there is an option available to change the disability, I think it should be there and it should be affordable, and people who want to partake of that should do it. They should have that choice. But I don't think they should be pushed into it, and I don't think it's for me or any abled person to pass judgment and to say, well, but that disability should definitely be fixed. It should be up to the individual. Or I guess in the case of children, the guardians of that individual. But it shouldn't be up to me as an abled person. Patrick Dodds, Steve, as next year is the 30th anniversary of Star Trek The Next Generation, how would you rate the pop cultural and overall full cultural impact of the series? Do you think as the decades roll on and virtual reality, cybernetics, and artificial intelligence become a reality that TNG will be thought of as an inspiration, like Geordi's visor, the holodeck, the binars, the Borg, the episode The Measure of a Man, etc.? Do you think in the future it could have a slow burn cultural impact on par with the original series? I'd really like to know. Sure, I think the cultural impact on people my age and maybe a little bit older than me of Star Trek The Next Generation will be, and to some extent already has been, profound. You just said it's been almost 30 years since the show debuted, and for many people, that was the Star Trek that they grew up with. That was the Star Trek that they first discovered and became enraptured with. A lot of people feel a lot closer to Captain Picard and to Data and to Dr. Crusher and Geordi and all those wonderful characters on TNG than they do to the original series. Because maybe they found the original series later after they realized, oh, hey, there was another one of these. And I do think that things like, virtual reality is something that is continually in development. Cybernetics, the combination of biology and technology, which hopefully will end up being a lot more positive than we see it portrayed through the Borg. But yeah, that's something that is happening. That's something that is actually happening. I've done stories on my And Now the Good News series a couple times about people who don't have arms or legs, who have artificial limbs and are able to move them using their brain because of a cybernetic implant that enables them to send signals to the mechanical arm just as they would to their physical arm, and they can move it and do stuff with it. And it's amazing. It's amazing. And I don't know if that sort of thing is directly inspired by Star Trek The Next Generation, but like the original Star Trek, I think TNG put a lot of those ideas just sort of out into the cultural ether. They gave us a lot to think about. They put that on TV and in front of people who were growing and thinking about what they wanted to do with their lives and applying their own imaginations and creativity, and these things are just sort of starting to happen. And I think we'll know for sure when somebody invents a fucking comm badge. Can somebody please invent a proper comm badge? And I don't just mean something that you Bluetooth link to your smartphone, okay? I mean a real comm badge. I mean, that's it. It's just a little pin, and you put it on your shirt, and that's it. You don't have to link it to anything. You don't have to keep anything in your pocket. You just go, doo-doo-doo, you know, call home. Tell them I need to borrow the car or whatever. I mean, I don't know why you'd need to borrow the car. Maybe because you spent all your money on the comm badge. I don't know. But when we see the development of the comm badge, then we'll be able to say, oh yeah, TNG definitely had an impact on something. Trinity. Hey Steve, is it cool if I use your show as a platform to crowdsource a favor from your fans for a minute? Thanks. Do any of you know anything or even just have any interest in writing stage musicals? The project I'm working on is an adaptation of the plot from Portal 2, using arrangements based on the original Mike Muraski soundtrack. One problem though, I know very little about arranging music and could actually use some help writing the lyrics as well. This is just a passion project of mine, and this isn't the kind of thing someone can do a good job of all by themselves. I've already asked my Facebook group of Portal Geeks, but no luck there, so now I'm coming to you. If you want to contact me, leave a message on the Facebook post for this video, or you can reach my Facebook at Trinity. Again, thanks. And Annie has also provided me with a link to the Google Doc that contains all of the work that she has done on this project so far, and that document is linked down there in the description box. So if you are musically inclined and you wish to help my pal Annie realize her dream of writing a Portal 2 musical, if you want to contribute to this project in a positive way, you can contact Annie on Facebook, and you can check out the Google Doc down there. Annie is good people. She and I are pals. She's helped me out with a couple of my 5 Things videos, actually, doing research or helping me write them, and she's really a fantastically talented and wonderful person. So if you're someone who is good on the keyboard and good with music and you want to help her out, please do, because Annie's awesome. And I know nothing about Portal 2. Nothing at all. I've never played the game. But I know that if she comes up with something based on it and I watched it, I would probably enjoy it, because she's good. She's good, and you can get in on that. You can help her realize her passion project. And I mean, how much fun is that, writing a musical about a video game? That's got to be a lot of fun, right? So check it out. Check it out in the description box. And I don't know, was that even a video game sound? It sounded kind of video gamey. I guess it was. Anyway, I don't know what it was, but I know what it means. It means that it is now time for
the lightning round.
Lucas Hackett, One Angry Brony. Yo, Steve, I got a little wrestling question for you. Would you pay to see a dream match between the New Day versus Demolition if they were still in their prime? If so, who would win? How would the match play out in your opinion? P.S. I bet you didn't know I'm also a certified G and a bona fide stud, and you can't teach that. I didn't know that, actually. I thought that Enzo was the only one. He makes such a big deal out of it. But yeah, Demolition versus New Day, yeah, absolutely. I would pay to see that match. It's a classic old versus new dream match. And I mean, if I were booking it, even though Demolition is one of my favorite teams, I would have New Day go over, just simply because New Day is the younger, newer team, and I think the young guys should go over most of the time. In Garward Shirase, I agree with you on how He-Man didn't age well. However, I think one of the worst aspects of the show was conversion into a movie. What did you think of the cinematic live-action version of He-Man? What about other movie versions of Saturday morning cartoons? The live-action He-Man movie was not great. I mean, I'm a huge He-Man fan, and I love the Masters of the Universe movie just for cheese value. It's a great bad movie to watch, but yeah, it's not a good movie at all. And as for other movie versions of Saturday morning cartoons, I guess I haven't seen the newer ones, but the older Ninja Turtles movies, the ones that came out when I was like a kid and a teenager, they weren't bad. Again, cheesy and kind of shitty, but in an entertaining and goofy and fun way. But I tell you what, did you see the movie they made of Super Friends earlier this year? I think it was called Batman versus Superman. That thing was awful. Joshua Purvis. Hi, Steve. My question is, what are some of your favorite episodes from Adventures of Superman? And who is your favorite actor that played Batman in movies? Mine is Christian Bale. Thanks. Keep up the good work. I think Christian Bale is my favorite Batman, too. I'll get that out of the way first, because I think his Batman movies are the best ones. At least the last two were pretty good. I'm still not a big fan of Batman Begins. But, my favorite episodes of Adventures of Superman, I love Panic in the Sky, which is the one where Superman has to destroy like an asteroid that is crashing to Earth. I think that's awesome. And Superman in Exile, which is where Superman is exposed to radiation and has to stay away from his friends. I think that's pretty good. There are a lot of episodes of that original Adventures of Superman show that I really, really love. Most of my favorites are from the black and white years, though, like the first and second season. I think those are just fantastic. Jack Coyer, if you were to create yourself a family of movie characters, who would you pick and why? One father, one mother, one brother, one sister, and one pet. Not to say that a family automatically means one father and one mother, of course, just for the sake of balancing out the genders in this hypothetical scenario. Well played, Jack. Father, who would be a good father? Captain Picard, maybe? Captain Picard would be a good dad, even though he hates kids, but he'd like me because I'd be a good kid. Mother, I don't know. Who would be a good mother? Do I have to have a mother? Do I have to have anybody? Can't me and Captain Picard just hang out and play catch from the holodeck? No! What am I saying? Captain Sisko. He's a dad. He's a good dad. You know what? Captain Sisko would be my dad, and we would play catch on the holodeck all fucking day long, and that would be my life. And I wouldn't need a mother, and I wouldn't need a brother, and I wouldn't need a sister, and I wouldn't need a pet. Although if I was going to have a pet, clearly Crypto the Wonder Dog, objectively speaking, is the best pet you could have. Rotting in the Midwest. After telling us you don't like Scooby-Doo anymore, is it safe to assume you are not a regular pot smoker? I think I've mentioned this once or twice before, but actually I've never smoked pot once in my life. I've never smoked anything once in my life. I've never smoked a cigarette, pot, nothing. I am straight edge except for booze. Malevolent Divinity, what social justice class are you? If I recall correctly, TSF and Kevin Logan are social justice bards, and Christie may have been a social justice rogue, but I can't recall what role you play in the party. I'm getting a monk vibe, to be honest, but one never knows. The whole wisdom to armor class thing seems like something you'd be using. I don't know what half of that means because I never played D&D. I do know that I took a test online a few weeks ago where I apparently qualified or came across in terms of alignment as lawful good, so maybe I should be a paladin. And also, paladins are the only ones I know of that have a theme song. Paladin, paladin, where do you roam? Paladin, paladin, far, far from home. I mean, do the monks or the bards have a fucking song? Don't think so. Sabrina Lozides Meredith. Hi, Steve. I have a bucket list question of sorts for you. We have a local theater that runs older films from time to time, and there are many, like Casablanca, that I've gotten to see on the big screen well after their original runs. Are there any films you've crossed off the big screen bucket list? Are there any films you really want to see, one for the big screen for the first time, or perhaps again? Yeah, actually, there's a theater in Frederick, which is about half an hour, 45 minutes away from where I live, that used to be a Tivoli movie house in the 1920s. It's now called the Weinberg Center, and they will show movies there. And I've seen a bunch of old movies there. I saw Gone with the Wind there, which I'm not a big fan of that movie, but it's still cool to see it on the big screen. And I've seen a bunch of silent movies. I've seen the original Nosferatu. I've seen my favorite movie ever, Sherlock Jr. I've seen Steamboat Bill Jr. I think I might have seen The General there. I have a bunch of Buster Keaton movies. I think I saw Modern Times there as well. Classic Charlie Chaplin movie. So yeah, there's a bunch of movies that I've seen there that I wouldn't have been able to see otherwise because they're not exactly recent releases. And the one that I haven't seen on a big screen yet that I absolutely must see on the big screen at some point, and will probably play at the Weinberg if I pay attention over the next few years, is 2001: A Space Odyssey. I've never seen 2001: A Space Odyssey on the big screen, and I really, really want to make that happen at some point. Sire No. Hey, Steve, I've been watching random episodes of Star Trek TNG lately. I have noticed a number of times where the writers use a method to solve plot points using something I like to call data ex machina. Things look bleak for the Enterprise, but Data saves the day because the bad stuff going on only affects humans, but not Data. My question, is this lazy on the writer's part or genius to include an android as an original character so they could use him in those situations? It's probably a little bit of both. You know, it is a lazy writer's shortcut, but they were very smart to give themselves that shortcut. So if they come up with this awesome story, but they can't figure out, oh, how do we get the Enterprise crew out of this one? Data. Data wouldn't be affected by the poison gas or whatever, you know. So it's a very clever trick, and it's also a shortcut that they can take. And if you want to look at it thematically, it also reinforces one of the great themes of Star Trek, which is our strength is in both our unity and our diversity. Because Data is different from all the other characters, but in certain cases, his differences are his greatest strength. And because he does things or works in certain ways that other people don't, he can save the day. You know, so I think it's a very Star Trek thing that the one who is different is the one who is able to save the day. So it's a lazy writer's trick, it's a very clever writer's trick, and it's also a wonderful restatement of one of the great themes of Star Trek. There you go. That's the last question. That's it for the questions. It is time now for the shout out of the week. And the shout out this week goes to an awesome podcast that coincidentally, okay, not coincidentally, I was just a guest on this past week. The podcast that gets the shout out this week is the Podunk Polymath podcast. I was a guest on the 8th episode, which we recorded last week and just went up this week. It was a really fun show. We talked about YouTube, we talked about atheism, we talked about all kinds of stuff. It was a really fun hour conversation that we had. I would recommend that you listen to that episode because I think it was pretty good because I'm just all over that fucking thing. And I think you should listen to the other episodes too. He's interviewed a lot of really cool people. Again, it's only up to episode 8 as of this video. It's a relatively new podcast, but he has interviewed some really cool people, some atheists and secular people who are on the more progressive, socially conscious side, which I really, really love and appreciate and would love to see more of. And the way we can get to see more of it is by making sure that everybody knows that there is an audience for that kind of content, and the way you do that is by supporting people who make that content, including the Podunk Polymath. So go check out the Podunk Polymath's podcast, listen to my episode, listen to all the episodes. You can go and listen to it at thepodunkpolymath.com. How easy is that to remember? I also want to shout out another podcast that I always do at this time, actually a whole bunch of podcasts, and I am of course talking about the Lemme Listen podcast. This is a whole family of podcasts created and produced under the watchful eye of one Jason Harding, the puppet master of Opinionville here on YouTube, one of my very good buddies. He is the mad genius behind a whole bunch of podcasts, including the original Lemme Finish, which he co-hosts with Finite Atticus, American Monsters, and How to Destroy Them, which is an awesome, hilarious improv comedy podcast. Filmtastic Voyage, hosted by Mike and Alex, which is a rebranding of a show that they used to do on the Lemme Listen network called Cinema Shack. Cinema Shack has now transformed. It has emerged from its chrysalis and become a beautiful butterfly called Filmtastic Voyage, and that's an awesome show you should listen to. There's Cinetific, hosted by Professor Jason and Professor Aaron, where they look at the scientific validity of popular films. And then there is, of course, Late Seating, the tardy movie review podcast hosted by Jason and me, where we look at a classic film, we give it a fresh review, we make fun of it, we summarize the plot, and we decide for ourselves and for your listening pleasure whether or not we think the movie deserves whatever reputation it has, whether its reputation is as one of the all-time cinema greats or is kind of a stinker. And this week, you can listen to our most recent episode, which was about the baseball classic Bull Durham, and you can also do a little bit of homework and get ready for our next new episode, which we will be recording this week and will go up next week, which is about the classic Universal horror film Frankenstein. So go watch Frankenstein, the James Whale-directed, Boris Karloff and Colin Clive starring Frankenstein, the granddaddy of all great horror films. It will be our subject on the next episode of Late Seating. You can listen to our most recent episode of Late Seating, and you can listen to all of the past episodes of Late Seating and all of the episodes of all of the great Lemme Listen podcasts by going to LemmeListenPodcast.com. And I really hope that you do, because it's quality shit, man. It's primo shit. Is that how people talk? Because like I say, I've never even smoked pot, but I think that's how they talk, according to shows that I've seen. Anyway, that's it for me, everybody. I want to remind you, as always, to please leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. Hey folks, one last thing before I go. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.